Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into a massive structural shift that's currently shaking up the business world. And we're looking specifically at a sector that usually prefers to stay behind the scenes, pulling the strings, the consulting industry. We are going to explore how artificial intelligence and automation aren't just changing what consultants advise their clients to do, but how they're fundamentally rewriting the entire business model of consulting itself. Honestly, if you buy, sell, or even just work alongside consultant services, the landscape is literally shifting under your feet right now.
Okay, let's dive into this, because there's an incredible irony here. Think about it. For decades, management consultants have confidently walked into boardrooms and told their clients to digitize, to optimize, and to automate their workflows. They essentially handed over the blueprints for disruption. But now, the very industry that has been aggressively pushing disruption onto everyone else is finally facing that exact same force. And the firms that are recognizing this early are already pulling way ahead, while the rest are, quite frankly, scrambling to keep up.
Which brings us nicely to Section 1, the irony of disruption. So, how are the major players actually reacting to this? Well, they're racing to catch up with the digital transformation they've successfully sold to the rest of the world for years. And to prove this isn't just some passing trend, let's look at the numbers. According to White Hat SEO data from 2026, 77% of consulting firms have now fully integrated AI into their internal systems. That is a fundamental operational shift. For example, you have McKinsey using an internal assistant called Lily. This thing can scan over 100,000 documents in seconds just to draft research summaries on demand. Meanwhile, heavyweights like BCG, Deloitte, and Accenture have all launched dedicated, specialized AI practice groups within just the last 18 months. They're adapting fast because, well, they have no other choice. Let's move right along to Section 2, compressing the consulting pyramid. To really grasp the impact of all this AI integration, we first have to understand the foundational business model that has kept consulting afloat for over a century. I'm talking about the traditional consulting pyramid. It requires layers, right? You've got partners at the very top selling the work, managers scoping it out, senior consultants structuring it, and then a really wide base of junior analysts doing all the heavy lifting, the research, the formatting. But get this statistic from Gartner. 40% of consulting tasks are now automatable. And I absolutely need to emphasize this point. That is not 40% of the administrative fluff. That is 40% of the actual core billable work that clients have historically paid top dollar for. And naturally, that leads directly into this next, somewhat staggering reality. According to Revelia Labs, the demand for entry-level consultant roles has dropped by roughly 40% compared to just 2023. Think about that. The tasks those junior roles were hired to execute, the data gathering, the benchmarking, formatting endless reports, and running trend analyses, all of that is now being handled cheaper, faster, and often a lot more accurately by AI systems. So, the crucial point here is this. The consulting pyramid isn't collapsing entirely. Businesses are always going to need expert advice, but it is being radically compressed. That wide base of junior analysts is thinning out rapidly because the mechanical, repetitive work is being handed over to intelligent systems. The entire shape of the industry is shifting from a wide, heavy pyramid to something much, much leaner. That takes us to Section 3, the AI implementation gap. Let's transition into the reality of how these tools are actually performing inside businesses today. What's really fascinating here is the sheer scale of adoption. We know that 75% of knowledge workers are now using AI at work in some capacity. That means adoption is absolutely massive. At the individual level, people are using ChatGPT, Claude, and all sorts of other tools to help with their daily tasks. But, and this is a really massive but, individual usage absolutely does not automatically equal business success. All right, prepare yourself for this one. According to Tool Fountain in 2026, a whopping 89% of firms report having absolutely zero measurable productivity gain at the organizational level from their AI initiatives. 89%. That means despite all that individual usage and all those expensive software licenses bought, at the end of the year, the needle hasn't moved a single inch for the business as a whole. So, how is that even possible? I really want you to think about that for a second. If almost everyone is using AI to work faster, why on earth isn't the organization as a whole seeing a massive return on that investment? Where exactly is all that productivity going? Well, the answer is simple but profound. Tools without strategy produce activity, not outcomes. Look, if an individual employee uses AI to draft their emails twice as fast, that's great for them, but it doesn't mean the organization is suddenly processing twice as many clients or launching twice as many products. Individual productivity only becomes organizational productivity when someone steps back and completely redesigns the underlying workflows around these new capabilities. And that brings us to Section 4, Strategy Meets Working Systems. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why a whole new category has emerged to fix this problem: automation consulting. The core difference between this and the old way is stark. Traditional consulting typically delivers, a 60-page slide deck? You get a strategy, some nice recommendations, and a roadmap, but at the end of the day, you are left to build it yourself. Automation consulting completely closes that gap. The deliverable isn't just a recommendation to automate. The deliverable is the actual built system, the tested workflow, the running operation. You aren't just renting a fancy strategy document anymore. You are buying a functioning capability that gets plugged right into your business. And the market is responding to this shift aggressively. According to Business Research Insights, the AI consulting market is projected to grow from $14.08 billion in 2026 to an astonishing $116.8 billion by 2035. That's a compound annual growth rate of over 26%. So what does that mean? It means the money is rapidly flowing away from firms that just diagnose problems, and it's flowing directly toward the firms that diagnose the problem and then actually build the solution. Because of this shift, the dynamics of who can win the really big contracts are completely changing. Data from Stratbridge in 2026 highlights that a lean, specialist team of just 20 people, when they are properly supported by AI systems and intelligent automation, can now deliver the exact same volume and quality of work that previously required a traditional consulting pyramid of 200 people. These lean AI-enabled boutique firms are literally outmaneuvering traditional giants. Why? Because they offer faster turnaround times, fewer handoffs, and ultimately a much lower cost to the client. This data from Source Central, which looked at Australian small and medium enterprises, perfectly captures the current landscape out there. Check this out. 56% haven't adopted AI at all. But look at that middle chunk. 39% have adopted it, but they are not enabled. Meaning they bought the fancy tools, but they haven't redesigned their actual workflows to make them useful. Only 5% are fully enabled to realize AI's potential. That massive 39% gap between simply adopting a tool and actually being enabled, that is exactly where automation consulting creates its real value. All right, let's wrap things up with Section 5, Choosing Your Next Partner. So how should you as a business leader adapt to all this? Let's pivot to some very practical advice for procuring services in this new era. First off, I want to reassure you that traditional consulting isn't entirely dead. Not at all. As the International Council of Management Consulting Institutes points out, while 40% of tasks are automatable, stuff like research and benchmarking, the remaining 60% is entirely reliant on human value. We are talking about complex change management, stakeholder alignment, and relationship-led advisory where trust matters way more than data. That 60% that requires human judgment, it's actually more valuable now than it ever has been. Let's move to and see how this builds into 3 absolutely crucial procurement questions you must ask your next consulting partner. Number 1, what is the deliverable? Are you getting a slide deck or are you getting a working system? Number 2, who implements? Do they just hand off the blueprint to someone else, or do the exact same people diagnosing the problem also build the solution for you? And number 3, what do you own when it's over? Do you keep the systems, the data, and the logic, or do they pack up and walk out the door with it? To navigate this new landscape, progressive firms are fundamentally changing how they even start engagements. For example, firms like Sunburnt AI kick things off with what they call an X-ray workshop. It's a highly structured discovery session. They come in, map out your workflows, identify where AI actually creates real, tangible operational value, and then they produce a phased roadmap with the real economics attached to it. And you know what's interesting? Sometimes the outcome of this workshop is discovering the hard truth that a business just isn't ready to build yet. And in the world of automation consulting, telling a client not yet isn't a failure at all. It's just doing the job properly. We've covered a ton of ground today in this explainer, but I really want to leave you with this final provocative thought from the source material. The line between automation consulting and traditional consulting is disappearing because the best consulting was always supposed to include implementation. The industry is just finally catching up to what clients have wanted all along. So the question you really need to ask yourself the next time you're about to sign a consulting contract is this: are you currently paying for advice, or are you paying for outcomes? Thanks so much for joining me, and keep exploring.